Hey, it's Jackie here. I'm here to talk about Mercury retrograde, and we are currently in that until the 19th of October this year. Now, usually Mercury retrograde lasts for about 3 or 4 weeks, and there can be 3 or 4 cycles in a year where we experience this Mercury retrograde energies or the archetypal qualities of Mercury retrograde and how that affects us and the world around us. No different to the way that the moon has profound influences over things in the world around us and can profoundly affect us, some more than others. So we'll see exactly the same with concepts relating to all the planets, not just the moon and not just Mercury retrograde. But today I'm here to talk about Mercury retrograde. So with the Mercury retrograde, you're going to see where there's a build-up period to it, and then there's going to be a post Mercury retrograde where we come out of the influences of that. Some people who are quite perceptive of energies and the world around them will be quite sensitive and notice the influence of Mercury retrograde as it's starting to build up and happen, and then they can be quite sensitive to it when they're in it. Quite often somebody will say, it really feels like it's Mercury retrograde time. Tell me if I'm right. And it in fact will be. They'll just know what it feels like, and they'll know the telltale signs of what they're seeing in the world around them. So when you think of this time and this planet's archetypal influences on us, Mercury, we want to think of concepts such as communication, expression, information, intellectual curiosity, the explanations of things. We think about electronics, travel, legal affairs, and clear thinking. They're all up for grabs when we think of Mercury retrograde. We can also get prone to losing things, not just objects, but things like photos and data files are all on that list. And this is notorious for past issues cropping up, or even past people where maybe they feel or you feel that there are past things there that are unresolved. This is where people from the past can show up again, especially if they're unresolved. Now, the name Mercury retrograde, it's quite deceptive because the planet isn't reversing in its orbit. It is the description of more of an optical illusion where the planet only appears to be moving backward from our viewpoint here on Earth. Now, as I said, Mercury isn't the only planet to experience this. In fact, all planets undergo retrograde periods throughout all different times. And sometimes you can have more than one planet that is in retrograde. And sometimes you might see this, or a meme might get passed around social media. I remember seeing one not long ago where it said there are 9 planets in retrograde. And it was kind of like a, no wonder I'm just holding on to the top of my head, or something similar to that. During this perceived kind of backward motion, the things the retrograding planet is associated with, their archetypal energies, the consciousness aspects or the concepts with, are pretty well, it's cut loose as its parent is no longer on track. So that's why we see upset with, in particular, relationships, technology, or contracts when Mercury, because it's the planet of communication, when it turns retrograde. It is definitely a time that I actually look forward to, like any other time. But because I know how to work within the expression of Mercury retrograde and what's likely to come up at that time, I actually find it much easier to negotiate and stress far less about than what a lot of people do. I know many people have feelings of literally dread because they misunderstand what it is, or it has been made out to be this massive, massive doom, gloom, hold on to your hats, dive into the bunkers type of time. It is made out to be a bad time. And when you have a relationship to something that is going to be a bad time, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have 3 weeks, or 3 or 4 times a year, of bad times. And I want to help you turn your relationship around with it and change your perceptions of it, because it is just an experience of time, right? Um, so I want you to avoid, and I don't want to take you through the process of where you have a relationship with it, where it's weeks of tension or dread or conflict, or even headaches can really commonly pop up at this time. If you knew, I'm going to give you a analogy. If you knew that you were having guests over and a few of them are family who you love dearly, but boy, can they be rowdy and talk loudly, drowning you and other guests out. So you're aware of this. You plan ahead and you set up the space and event to be able to accommodate that, such as you have indoor outdoor spaces that are all connected for people to be able to spread out so that the noise spreads as well. The point to my super weird analogy just then is that you just need to be aware, get the heads up, know what it is that's happening around you, plan, and then enjoy it, because it really can be a fun and super productive time period. This period of time is notorious for miscommunication, misunderstandings, and conflict that arise from this Mercury retrograde time. And largely, the miscommunication, the misunderstandings, and the conflicts arise because there is that lack of awareness of, ah, after all, this is Mercury retrograde time, so I'm just going to take it easy or take a step back, or I understand why this is happening. Without that there, it is far more volatile, right? It is easy to hear a tone of voice in an email or a text that a sender actually didn't send at all. It's very, very easy to get triggered by what comes across your path as communication and expression from others during this time of Mercury retrograde. I have been in situations not that long ago where someone has had an exchange with someone before me, and in this exchange, it was very heated. It was quite volatile. It was really kind of angry, projected voices and accusations and things like that. And I kind of would say, well, that was interesting. And the person with me said, oh, I didn't like the tone of her voice. And I was kind of thinking to myself, and my expression must have said it, but I was like, what tone of voice? And the person with me said, oh, there was a tone, right? The person on the receiving end of the outburst was really genuinely bewildered and upset because they actually meant no harm at all. But the person thought they heard a tone and then they reacted outwardly immediately. That's classic Mercury retrograde influence. And it's one that can be totally avoided, because when you're interacting with the world around you, if you have a really soft awareness of it's Mercury retrograde, so I'm going to really take things with a grain of salt. I try to do that anyway on an ordinary day, but during Mercury retrograde, I am so much more aware of it. So I do take things with a grain of salt. I will clarify. I really try to embody the four agreements, where I don't take things personally because it's really got nothing to do with me. But situations like that can definitely be avoided during Mercury retrograde. I can't stress this enough. It is a time to be very clear and precise with your words. So take the time to really think or feel. I do better with feeling into what do I actually want to say, and then say it as clearly and close to your personal truth that you possibly can. Of the heart, expressing of the heart and not from the head will get you the best results. Now, I always venture a lot more gently into Mercury retrograde time. I know that things aren't always as they seem, and the snappy tone of voice that I've just interpreted in a text might not have been intended that way at all, and often it's not. It's easy to read into things that just aren't there at all. And in a case like that, I'll step back and say to myself, it might not have been meant to sound that way at all. I'm going to ask them to clarify. And I will reach out to them verbally or in person, and I'll say something to the effect of, hey, that text you sent me earlier, could you expand on it a bit? Because I don't quite understand what you were trying to say. And then I'll take it from there, right? But I definitely pause, take a step back, regroup. It is a time when people really tend to get up in their heads about things, overthink things, and speak from intellect as opposed to speaking from our heart or from our gut etheric brain. And I've noticed that a lot in the last week. When somebody gets up into their head about things, uh, and don't get me wrong, I'm Gemini. Mercury is my ruling planet. I can be very prone to finding myself too much in my intellect, especially if I'm in a really creative mode and I have lots of ideas coming in, and it's ideas that relate to clients or businesses. I can get really into my intellect about that. So when someone gets up in their head, this can then lead to feelings of separation, not feeling quite right. They can feel lonely, disconnected, ungrounded. Despondent was a word that I heard yesterday from a client, and often feeling really separate and disconnected from yourself and definitely from the world around you. So, what I'm trying to say is that this can be amplified during this period of time. You can have people that I will have people come to me and say, I'm feeling really separated from myself. I feel really disconnected. I feel really lonely. It's Mercury retrograde. And they normally wouldn't feel it during that time. Or another thing that can happen is if you're a person that can from time to time feel those things, it can actually amplify it more. And you'll be like, what on earth is going on? I feel horrendous. All right. So it can definitely, big magnifying glass on it and amplify it. Our whole body mind complex is built upon systems of communication. All right. And its health and great functioning relies on the ability for the cells and all the different parts of the body's ability to be able to communicate really well with each other. So oftentimes this is when health issues can arise because of miscommunication happening within the body mind complex. So, yeah, you can get health issues arising because of miscommunication inside during Mercury retrograde period. And I guess if you're looking at health from a very allopathic perspective, then you would be really stumped as to what's going on and why it's happening. There are definitely periods of time where, or they're just actually, let me go at this from a different perspective. There are huge benefits from Mercury retrograde. It is a brilliant time to review things, check, recheck, revisit things. It's not the best time to start new things. I just launched a new website this week and a new academy, but I knew what I was getting myself into. So finishing off projects, tasks that are waiting to be completed is super, super great. And it will also give you this, wonderful sense of purpose and progress to do things like that as well. It is definitely a time to go slower. So, seriously, during Mercury retrograde, slow down. You set your own pace. It's your life, it's nobody else's life. It is a time of recalibration. That is going to happen automatically, regardless of what you do. So it can very much feel like your life, your body, your mind, spiritually, you're getting recalibrated. The more you resist Mercury retrograde, the more you resist going slower, working against the energies of it, the harder that recalibration is actually going to be. It can be a really rich period of creativity and connections. And I tell you what, I am dying to get into some creativity this afternoon. So that's what I'm doing straight after I finish talking to you. If you're able to be flexible and avoid getting buried in the details of things, you're going to come through this with barely a scratch on you. That said, you know, you can sign contracts, you can make major financial decisions, or you can even start a new job in this period of time, or a new website like I did. If you're careful, double checking everything, moving slowly, and following these few things. I'm going to take you through a few things of what you can do and what you can avoid that will help you enormously. Okay, so Mercury retrograde, list of do's and avoids. Do brainstorm. Think of every available solution to the problems that you're facing. One of them has got to work eventually. I've always got the belief that everything is figure outable. Gosh, it stands me in good stead. Do be flexible, adaptable, and patient. You may have to step outside your comfort zone and come up with the right fix. Do think in very broad terms. The bigger and the farther reaching the solution is, the more likely it is going to work. Do stay updated on delays and cancellations, especially while you're traveling. This happens frequently, so get used to going with the flow. If you plan on traveling or doing any major events during Mercury retrograde, keep an eye on your car. Yeah, check warning lights, schedule maintenance appointments, and monitor the fuel tanks. So the little arrow pointing to full or empty might not be as accurate as you think. Back up your computer or any kind of devices that are important to you so that you don't lose important data and then they shut down with no warning. In the last Mercury retrograde, I got the Samsung black screen of death, lost everything on my phone. Big learning lesson because I thought it was backing up automatically and it wasn't. So double check, right? Double check, even triple check if you have to. And yeah, I lost everything and I had to start from scratch and it was a massive pain in the backside. So tech issues are notorious during this time. A really great time to revisit recurring issues from the past, right? You know that one thing that's really been on your mind lately, that is the perfect time to address it and try to resolve it, you know, all at once for you so it doesn't keep coming back around like a cycle. Avoid getting into negative thinking cycle. Things can feel like they are falling apart around you sometimes during Mercury retrograde time. Super important to double down on your resources and things that work for you, especially spiritually, and to stay positive and remember that this is just a speed bump. It is a wave of experience that we're going through, Mercury retrograde, and it does pass. Always does. And it always will, every experience. Don't try to be a lone wolf. When things break or they get tough, make an appointment with a professional or reach out to somebody to get it fixed or to get support rather than trying to doing it on your own. Plan. So don't try to plan for a big presentation or draft up maybe, you know, super duper important legal papers and documents. If you can't avoid tasks like this, then please pay very close attention to the details. Try not to rely on technology. This is where Mercury retrograde kicked my ass this week. If you have an important meeting coming up, write it down or print out the information that you're going to need. Double check that everything's working properly before you use it, regardless of how long you've been using it for. Don't go into things with the perception of, yeah, I've used that for ages, it always works for me, I've never had any problems with it. check it, okay? Try to avoid rushing. Slowing down the pace can help you eliminate super costly mistakes. Try to avoid having unrealistic expectations, right? Because of misunderstandings and mix ups, things might not turn out as you planned. Avoid disappointment by keeping expectations relatively low, or better still, just surrender to the outcome that you think should happen. Surrender, let it go. Avoid setting unrealistic timelines. Red tape can keep documents in a holding pattern for such a long period of time. So get comfortable with there might be delays during this time. Mercury retrograde also affects profoundly our health, our emotional well-being, and the way that our minds work. When you're stressed, you have a harder time getting to sleep, or healing processes running through the body effectively. And during this time, stress levels and anxiety levels tend to be more significant than what they usually are. And lying awake at night, anxiously wondering about how you could have prevented the day's mistakes or about what could happen tomorrow, it is going to take a toll on your health, okay? And definitely could make matters worse. You know, sleep deprivation is enormously corrosive to your health, and it's something that you want to make sure that you are not having an issue with. Good quality sleep is profoundly important. So, why, wallowing on negative energy only makes the issue more prevalent. So, being tired, anxious, or even distracted further can amplify Mercury's effects. For instance, your exercise routine might be thrown off by your wireless headphones dying and not working anymore. Or making your lunch can become a bit of an issue if the fridge breaks down or the stove malfunctions. Don't sweat it. I've got some pretty great tips to help keep your body mind complex in the flow during this period of unpredictability, and that's all it is. So, here's some self care tips for the body mind complex. You could try to make sure your alarm is set properly before going to bed so that you don't wake up late and then you feel rushed. And I tell you what, that is one thing that doesn't happen to me very often at all, but I do have memories of waking up well past when I needed to, and it's a horrible feeling, right? Try to listen to music that you love. Not music that other people love, but music that you love, especially soothing music or music that's attached to visualizations. You can put on noise cancelling headphones, wear a sleep mask, anything that can desensitize the five senses, shut out distractions, and let you drift off to sleep. Binary beats are great as well for that, and you can find them on YouTube. There's lots of people that have those. You can plan a digital detox. I'm all for this. If there's ever a great time to take a break from electronics and close out your social media apps, it's this time. I have actually noticed this happening a lot this year in the few people that I enjoy watching across socials. They say it's Mercury retrograde. I'm going on a sabbatical. Or they'll just say, I'm taking a time off. I'm going on a sabbatical. And it will be right during that Mercury retrograde period. Whether they're consciously aware of it, that they've done it that way during that time or not, I'm not quite sure. But I have noticed it is a lot during that time, which is fabulous. You can practice some breathing exercises to utilize when you're having a technology or travel kerfuffle. What's the point in getting worked up about something that we have absolutely no flipping control over? Things to avoid. Maybe don't try to avoid planning super duper elaborate 10-course meals using fancy kits and kitchen gadgets. The simpler the better, maybe during this time. Watch the news or avoid TV shows. Avoid, avoid, avoid. I seriously advise not doing this. So watching the news or violent TV shows, or even listening to the news, whether it be on the TV or on the radio. I just advise not doing it at any time of the day or year, any time. It is incredibly toxic, pathologically toxic. And if you knew how bad it was, you'd never tolerate it being in your life at all. So, at least during Mercury retrograde time, avoid, but seriously consider deleting from your life altogether that stuff. Use your phone or other bright electronic devices in bed. That's another one I advise against no matter what. It badly affects the brain function overall. That has ripple effects onto affecting hormonal function, and I could do a whole other vlog about that just on its own. Anything that jeopardizes the sleep quantity, the quality and quantity, you want to avoid. Now, here are the Mercury retrograde cycles for 2022 so that you can know what the road before you looks like, and you can decide how you want to transverse that. I have absolutely looked at what the Mercury retrograde periods are for the coming year. When I usually around September, August, I map out 2 weeks and I do all my business planning for not only the rest of the year but the following year as well during that period of time. And I will look at when is Mercury retrograde, and I will seriously consider, do I want to be traveling and teaching courses or presenting or launching this new thing during those periods of time? And usually it's no thanks. I can do it at other times. Why would I want to try and put myself through that when I know that there is so much of a higher chance of things maybe not doing so well? So you have a lot of choices and flexibility on how you can navigate these periods of time. Okay, so the 2022 periods are January 15th to February the 5th, May the 11th to June the 2nd, September the 11th to the 30th, if I remember correctly. And then right at the end of the year, we've got another one that starts on December the 31st and it continues into 2023. And it's about January the 12th that goes into, but they're very easy to find the dates online as well. You can pop it into your calendar, your phone, wherever you use it. You'll see it, know what its vibe is all about now. This video will forever be available to you, so you can come back and revisit it whenever you need, and you'll know what to watch out for, be more focused with, and most importantly, enjoy the ride. It is a great time for a lot of catching up and finishing off, and the deep repair, and really profound connection if we're doing it from the heart or from our instinctual abilities. So it's a very, very helpful time. I hope that's helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.